The Ottoman Empire, one of the longest-lasting empires in history, ruled for over 6 centuries and influenced the course of global history in profound and lasting ways. Its story is a complex, multifaceted tale of triumph and tragedy, of brilliant rulers and devastating defeats, of a cultural renaissance and a slow, agonizing decline. The origins of the Ottoman Empire are not simply a tale of military conquest, but one of strategic alliances, cultural integration, and visionary leadership. From its humble beginnings as a small, nomadic Turkish tribe in the hills of Anatolia, the Ottomans grew to become a global power whose influence reached across 3 continents, shaping the course of history in Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. The Ottoman Empire's story begins in the late 13th century, a time of great turbulence and uncertainty in the region. The Seljuk Empire, once a dominant force in the Middle East, had collapsed, leaving behind a power vacuum that was ripe for the taking. Amid this chaos, a small Turkish tribe, led by a chief named Osman I, emerged. Osman was no ordinary leader. He was a visionary with a sense of destiny that transcended the narrow horizons of his small tribe. Under his leadership, the tribe grew stronger, and Osman's strategic marriages and alliances began to lay the foundations for what would become one of the most powerful empires in history. Osman's military genius was equally matched by his political acumen. He recognized the declining power of the Byzantine Empire and began to launch raids into Byzantine territory, taking advantage of the weakening state of his neighbors. By 1300, Osman had consolidated his power, establishing the first Ottoman state in what is now Western Turkey. Osman's death in 1326 marked the end of his reign, but it was not the end of the Ottoman vision. His son, Orhan I, expanded the nascent empire, securing more territory and further establishing the Ottomans as a growing force in the region. But it was under the leadership of his grandson, Mehmed II, that the Ottoman Empire would take its most significant step toward greatness. In 1453, after a brutal siege that lasted for months, Mehmed II successfully conquered the city of Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of over 1,000 years of Byzantine history and the rise of the Ottomans as a major global power. Mehmed's conquest of Constantinople was a turning point in world history. The once impenetrable city walls fell before the might of Ottoman cannons, and the Byzantine Empire, which had stood as a bastion of Christianity and civilization for centuries, was no more. The Ottoman Empire now controlled one of the most strategic cities in the world, a crossroads between Europe and Asia, a city that would become the heart of the empire and its cultural, political, and economic center. The conquest of Constantinople was not just a military victory, it was also a cultural triumph. Mehmed II, who would become known as Mehmed the Conqueror, transformed Constantinople into a vibrant metropolis, blending Ottoman, Byzantine, and Persian influences to create a city that was not only a political center, but also a cultural hub. Under his rule, the Ottomans began to build one of the most powerful and sophisticated empires the world had ever known. However, it was not just Mehmed who would leave a lasting legacy. The most famous and celebrated Ottoman ruler was Suleiman the Magnificent, who reigned from 1520 to 1566. Suleiman's reign is often considered the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, a time of remarkable military conquests, cultural flourishing, and legal reforms. Suleiman's military campaigns took the Ottoman Empire to its furthest territorial extent. He defeated the powerful Safavid Empire in Persia, expanded Ottoman territory into Central Europe, and even laid siege to the gates of Vienna. His campaigns in the Mediterranean and North Africa secured Ottoman control over vital trade routes and made the empire a dominant naval power. However, Suleiman's accomplishments were not limited to military victories. He was also a reformer, a legislator who sought to codify and streamline the laws of the empire. The Kanun, or secular law, created under Suleiman, complemented Islamic Sharia law, and became the backbone of the Ottoman legal system. His reforms touched every aspect of life in the empire, from the military to the economy, and were instrumental in the stability and success of the empire. But Suleiman's reign was not just about governance and military conquest. He was also a patron of the arts, science, and literature. The Ottomans under Suleiman enjoyed a cultural renaissance, with stunning architectural works such as the Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul and the Topkapi Palace, masterpieces of Ottoman architecture that remain symbols of the empire's grandeur. The Ottomans were also at the forefront of intellectual achievement during this period, with scholars in the empire making important contributions to fields such as astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. The empire's success during Suleiman's reign was also a testament to the skill and organization of the Ottoman military. The Janissaries, the elite infantry corps that had been a crucial part of the empire's success, were at their peak during Suleiman's rule. These highly disciplined soldiers, many of whom were recruited from Christian communities through the Devshirme system, formed the backbone of the Ottoman military and helped secure the empire's territorial expansion. Yet, despite the many successes of the Ottoman Empire during this period, cracks began to appear in its foundation. The very qualities that had made the empire great, its military power, territorial expansion, and centralized bureaucracy, began to show signs of decay. As the empire expanded, it became increasingly difficult to govern such a vast and diverse territory. The central authority weakened, and local leaders began to assert more power. The Janissaries, once an elite force, became more interested in political power and privileges than in military service. Meanwhile, the rise of European colonial powers, particularly Spain, Portugal, and later Britain, began to challenge Ottoman dominance in the Mediterranean and beyond. The Ottomans were no longer the dominant power they had once been. In the 17th century, the empire faced a series of military defeats that would gradually erode its power. The failed siege of Vienna in 1683 was a significant turning point. The failure to capture Vienna marked the beginning of the empire's long, slow decline. Over the next century, the Ottomans lost territory to European powers, including Austria, Russia, and Britain. The empire's once feared military began to struggle with outdated tactics and technologies. By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was in a state of disarray. The rise of nationalism among the empire's diverse ethnic and religious groups, combined with increasing pressure from European powers, led to a series of internal revolts and external conflicts. The empire, once so strong and unified, was now a fragmented state. The Ottoman Empire's decline was slow but inevitable, and by the early 20th century, the empire had become known as the sick man of Europe. The empire's participation in World War I on the side of the Central Powers would be its final undoing. The defeat of the Central Powers and the signing of the Treaty of Sèvres in 1920 marked the end of the Ottoman Empire. The empire was formally dissolved in 1922, and the modern Republic of Turkey was born under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Atatürk's reforms sought to modernize Turkey and remove the influence of the Ottoman legacy. The transition from the Ottoman Empire to the Turkish Republic was marked by radical political and social changes. Atatürk established a secular republic and sought to modernize the country by embracing Western institutions, laws, and values. The Ottoman Empire, however, left behind a profound legacy. Its influence on the political and cultural landscape of the Middle East, the Balkans, and North Africa is still evident today. The empire's contributions to art, architecture, law, and culture are still celebrated and studied. The Ottomans, with their rich cultural heritage, remain a symbol of both greatness and decline, a reminder of the impermanence of power and the enduring nature of civilization. The rise and fall of the Ottoman Empire is a story of vision, ambition, and resilience. The Ottomans left behind a legacy that has shaped the modern world in profound ways, and their impact continues to be felt in the regions they once ruled. From the towering mosques of Istanbul to the legal systems that still influence the region, the Ottomans have left a mark on history that will never be erased.